She got nice lips.
We are so live right now, so letting you know.
So stop mouthing and start actually talking.
Yeah, that's two.
How come your mouth is moving and nothing's coming out, Bob? Are you on mute?
Okay, for those of you who are watching the broadcast, we are live with Bob Hill and Rick Tlson, and these guys are pretty much the guys that you want to speak to when it comes to channeling, when it comes to issues in the occult and so on. UCM has brought them together in one interview. For those of you who are looking to enter the Zoom room, we have placed links. Are you carrying your skeleton around? We have placed links all around. We're about to let people into the Zoom room. And for those of you who are in the UCM community, the Zoom links are actually on the announcements page. So I'm about to let people into the room and we're about to start this interview. You guys ready?
Oh, so should I bring the skeleton back for the start?
No, you shouldn't bring the skeleton back for the start.
Okay.
All right. Let's start this interview. First thing is first, I want to say that it's been a pleasure knowing these gentlemen. We got to know each other under very interesting circumstances. I was very, very cold both times. And that's because we live in an area with a very harsh climate. Now, this area where I live in, you wouldn't think that there are so many esoterically minded people out here, but it seems like this place is truly blessed and nature is always in your face. And so we have a lot of fun out here, and we're going to start with Bob Hill. Bob is a channeler. He channels the entity collective that is known as Josiah. For those of you who are watching this on Facebook or watching this in the community, you would have seen Bob channeling before. Bob is actually going to be doing a channeling on December the 8th, and we're going to be streaming that live from the broom closet. For those of you who know what the broom closet is, if you know, you know. Okay, so Donna has allowed us to use a space, and so we're going to be streaming live from the broom closet on December the 8th at around 6:30 p.m. for those of you in Regina who want to attend this channeling. Okay, I'm going to let these gentlemen introduce themselves. Bob, you go first.
Hello, I'm Bob Hill. I'm the entity I channel the entity known as Josiah. If any of you have heard me talk on here before, I will tell you that I'm not really all that spiritual, but I have some ideas regarding our reality creation, which if you would like to ask, I can comment. When I channel, I like to tell people I have no agenda. I don't care whether you believe or don't believe, that's up to you. If you get something out of it, that's great. And so that's who I am. I'm not really into a lot of the spiritual stuff, but my good friend Rick Tlson is into it all.
Rick, let's hear from you. Rick, who is sitting in the dark, that we can help
Just,
see you.
do you want me to turn on a light?
That would be very, very much appreciated, Rick. Yes.
Is that better?
Much. Go ahead.
Well, Bob just introduced me. He said that I know everything about spirituality.
All
which
right.
is not true, of course. And I see we're introduced as an expert, and I don't really think that I'm an expert at anything, actually, other than maybe sleeping. I'm really good at sleeping. I can do it pretty much anywhere.
Yeah. The reason why they're being introduced as expert is that you guys have been doing this longer than any body that I have known. You guys were doing this when I was just learning TM, and that's a very long time. So, Bob, the channeling experience, I know I'm going to preempt questions. We're going to open up the forum for people to ask questions, right? But I just want to ask questions, even preempt some of them before they're asked. People always will like to know what the channeling experience is like for you as a channeler, because they see it and they're like, okay, is he okay? So what is that experience like for you?
Well, a long time ago, almost 20 years ago, I learned to sort of get out of the way, I guess you might say. I learned to go into a deeper meditation and not listen to the channeling or even be aware of what's being said. Because when I listen to it, I have a tendency to try to edit a little bit of it when we first started, because I don't really necessarily believe in all of it. But now I get out of the way. And so my channeling experience for me is I'm in a different state of consciousness and I'm not aware of what's being channeled. And I haven't listened to the channelings or read them or anything for probably 10 or 15 years. So I'm more interested in the meditative state that I can get in when I'm channeling. And I think that it's really enhanced because there are so many other people who are also involved, and that collective energy helps me go deeper. So that's what I experience when I channel, is a deeper state of consciousness, something that I have difficulty getting at if I just meditate on my own.
Okay. And Rick, you are part of the Monroe Institute. I suppose my first question is, people usually associate the Monroe Institute with just meditation. Is that what you do? You're a meditator. What would you describe that yourself as? Because you don't describe yourself as anything. You're not an occultist, you're not a meditator. So what exactly would you describe the whole Monroe Institute and the whole experience of Monroe Institute as?
No, I would say that I am a meditator for sure. And with Monroe, in 1980, I read Bob Monroe's book, Journeys Out of the Body, because it was the cult classic in the classic out-of-body literature available at that time.
Mm-hmm.
In the back of the book, there was a little blurb about the Monroe Institute. And I set my intention in 1980, one day I'm going to go there, one day being the key, right? Mm-hmm. And life kind of comes along and gets in the way. I bought a farm and got married and had kids. And, a responsible parent doesn't go running off to the Monroe Institute, leaving their family at home. Mm-hmm. And it took actually 17 years of intent. And on my birthday in 96, I bought something called the Gateway Voyage Program, which is a week-long program at Monroe. And in February of 97, I went there for the first time. And it was such a powerful experience. And I realized quickly when I got there that I would be coming back again and again. Half the reason, because when you think of the most bizarre people you know at home, here's 20 of them all in one room from around the world, all with that same intention of meditation. And it's my understanding that the Bon of Tibet had a system of going into a cave for 30 to 40 days with the whole idea of thinning the veil to induce a near-death-like experience, either in that 30 or 40 days in the cave or within a week or two, often within a week or two after they get back in the so-called real world. And Monroe is that cave for me. It is that near-death-like powerful experience of thinning the veil, because you're meditating with this group and using hemisync technology and just compounding belief systems that they've found that work over the years, that you spend a week doing this and there are going to be some really bizarre stuff that happens to people. Every time I go there, I have something coming down the pipe, and it might be a week or two after I get home, but there's going to be something big happen. And so because of my love for Monroe I have bought myself a special gift of a trip to Monroe at least once a year since 97 when I went there the first time. And then when my son turned 16, I used to alternate with my son and daughter, taking them someplace in the winter for holidays. My son couldn't decide where he wanted to go. And I said, well, how about going to Monroe? Because he helped me do the weekend workshops, which I present. And he said, sure. At the end of that week, he says, this is where we're going from now on for our winter holiday, Dad. And so he's been there many times as well. It probably is. I knew after that first time that I was there, I'd never done LSD, but I knew that this system is so powerful, it is probably as powerful as LSD, and the government must not know about it, or they'd be shutting this place down. And the government does know about it, and the remote viewing programs use Monroe. It's been used for years as a gateway. Interesting they use that word, to the remote viewing programs for the CIA and the military and so on. They all go to Monroe first and take that week gateway voyage to get them out of the box in their thinking. If you work for the right people at Los Alamos Labs, they often pay their people to go to Monroe for a week to get them out of the box in their thinking. So you run into all kinds of scientific types down there, and people that you don't usually see at spiritual stuff. It's often at spiritual things you will notice that there is 2/3 to 3/4 women to men. At Monroe, I was at one class where there was one girl and 20 guys. So unusual for a spiritual type event, I guess you could say. Even Alexander, who was a neurosurgeon, died for 8 days. And before that happened to him, he used to kind of talk down to the people who talked about near-death experiences. And he believed it was just all chemicals in their brain. But after he had experienced 8 days of it himself, when he came back, he started looking for a place or a thing that could bring that to him. And he didn't want to use LSD, I guess. So he found the Monroe Institute and went there, and he said, this is as close as you can come to that near-death experience without any trauma. I was at one workshop at Monroe where every single person there was an LSD user. I was the only one that never tried it. And they all said the same thing. They get as expanded at Monroe as what LSD does. But as I've told you before about the sex with the gorilla thing, you are in charge.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of people haven't heard that joke. So I think you better tell that joke.
All right. So I tell kids when they're thinking about using drugs to alter their consciousness, just remember, this is like sex with a gorilla. No matter how much fun you might think that'll be, just remember, you ain't done till the gorilla is done. And drugs are like that. They hold you there. Whereas when you're in charge, why, as in meditation, why? Is that good visuals for everyone?
Yeah, that's a good visual.
My daughter was a teenager and tried salvia because it was legal here at that time. Is it still? Maybe, I don't know. And she says, Dad, what you're saying, you always say about sex with a gorilla, that's just what it's like. I tried that salvia, and for the next 15 minutes, I was held in place and I couldn't get out of it. I'm not doing that again.
I have a question for you. You have lived a life which most people wouldn't consider spiritual. For those of you who don't know Bob, he's a hunter. Yes, he's a hunter with a bow and arrow. Like, I still haven't gotten over that yet. This man was a taxidermist, not the same frame that you would always think of a spiritual person, right? Or anybody who has anything to do with spirituality. He's a taxidermist, a hunter. He has lived. He's cow wrangled. I saw him like tying up cows and stuff in a picture. And I suppose the question that I have to ask is, spirituality comes in different forms, right? We give it the label spirituality when it really isn't. Bob has some very controversial views, which a lot of people would like to challenge him on, right? I myself have challenged him on a number of his views and so on. Now, what do you believe? The first view, everything that you create, everything that is what you're experiencing, whether it be a bad or good thing, is in the end self-created to a certain extent or to total extent. Bob, you want to elaborate on that view, because I'm sure somebody's going to be asking you questions about that at some point in time.
And that's basically my philosophy, that we have a collective consciousness and we have our individual consciousness. And it's a combination of those belief systems that results in the reality that we experience. And some of those belief systems you hold and that we all hold, you may not even know what they are, but that doesn't mean that you don't hold them at some level of your consciousness. And you can learn to get there to alter them if you wish to.
Mhm.
And so it's really difficult to get me to buy into some of the stuff that people use that they think will influence their reality. Like, my thing is, if somebody gives me a crystal, I'll set it up where the sun shines through it because it makes a really nice ornament. But for me, that's the value that it has. I don't give them any value because if they have value, I believe that I'm the one that puts the value there. And so if your crystals have value to you, I'm not saying throw them away. I'm just saying understand that you're responsible for the power that they have. You give them the power. And so it's like if you're into astrology, my advice would be to frame the last particular thing that you got in astrology and to realize that you control the universe. The universe does not control you. That's just my thoughts.
No, that's a very interesting perspective because it has a number of different applications. So I absolutely agree with you that people have control over their lives. I think that when people choose to outsource their experiences to some arcane force or whatever else that is outside themselves, it lays them open to what if something else happens? How are you going to recover? Right? So as an example, you gave a very good example. If your health depends on your amethyst crystal and I steal your amethyst crystal, do I steal your health? As an example. A lot of people have belief systems which tends to make the stuff that they experience a crutch. Everything is a tool at the end of it. And what you put into it is what you get out. Okay? That's my belief to a large extent. What you put into things is what you get out. And I think a lot of people, they feel that they need the tools. But I have met a lot of people who are psychic. I hang around with psychics all day long. I hang around with mediums. We have a medium in this chat at some point. We're not going to be calling names, but we have a medium in the chat right now. We have a medium on the community watching as I see. All right, another medium on the community watching. So when people are born with these, they think of it as these anomalies. They think of it as an affliction, right? You're a channeler right now. There are legit people who speak to dead people, as an example, okay? There are legit people who are very psychically enabled. I hang around them a lot of the time. With regard to the channeling experience, how much control do you have over the channeling experience once it's started?
Well, I put myself out of the way, so I really, allow it to happen. The flip side is people ask me, does that ever interfere with my day-to-day life? And the answer to that is absolutely no. If I ever had the feeling that there was Josiah or some other entity that was trying to give me information in my awake consciousness state, that would be the end of it there. No such thing. That does not happen. I don't depend on guides or angels or anybody else to give me advice. My advice comes within my own self-conscious awareness, not from somewhere else. So I was aware when I started channeling of what was being said, and Rick has been there since day one, and he will tell you that I was pretty hesitant and that I would edit some of the channeling that was coming out because I did not necessarily believe that it was right. Just because there's some entity telling you that this is how it is, I'm not suggesting for a minute that you take that at face value. You should check that out and see whether or not that would apply to your way of life. And that's what I was doing. But I have found that when I channel and I put in that request for channeling when I'm going into my meditation, I have found that if I just kind of get out of the way, if I ignore the channeling, if you would, that I get a way better experience. I mean, I have experienced things that I just can't do when I meditate all by myself. So, you know, I don't know if that answers your question, but basically, I don't allow that entity or any other entity to influence my life without my okay, without my agreeing. Okay, well, I think that might be right, but I don't necessarily agree with that.
Mm-hmm. All right. So, Rick, you have had a very interesting lecture, which I live stream in the community and on Facebook regarding aliens. So I suppose I should probably ask you, because I've been to your house, I've seen everything inside there. How did you get into this alien research to the extent that that you got into it? Rick, you're muted, I think.
Yes, I was muted. And I think it's one of those things that, you know, there are people who think that they come here with some kind of a mission. If I have a mission, it is to bring alien energy, to use that term, into this reality, for sure. No question about it. From the time that I, you know, say 2 or 3 years old, my family has always seen flying saucers. And I've always retained that information about the saucers, either seeing them myself or the stories that my family would tell about them. And certainly when the Betty and Barney Hill story broke loose, I was too young really to be into that kind of stuff or even read about it in the newspaper. But I certainly remembered their faces on the Toronto Star Weekly and hearing people talk about the story, for sure. So it's, I don't know if it's so much research as just more or less just falls out of the sky and lands on me. So it makes the research, if you want to call it that, so much easier, right?
And so what is your take on this concept that there are different alien races interacting with us on a daily basis? I understand that people have seen UFOs, and right now there's actually an inquiry going on in the US, an inquiry of disclosure on that phenomenon, right? I believe the Navy or so have actually admitted that they call them UAVs now, have said that, yes, we have experienced those phenomenon and we don't know what they are. And so what has been your personal experience with unidentified flying objects or still objects or whatever? I don't know why everything has to be flying, because it's aliens, right? They might just walk up to you and not fly. Go ahead.
Well, certainly, like I say, it's been all my life. My grandparents were going to Winnipeg, which was the closest big town. I was born on the shore of Lake of the Woods, Ontario, which is Lake of the Woods is in Manitoba, Ontario, and Minnesota, international water. And the closest big town to there is Winnipeg. So my grandpa had to go to the doctor in Winnipeg. And on his way there, they were at an intersection and a flying saucer flew low over the road in front of them. They got to Winnipeg and got their hotel room, and the people next door were talking about seeing a flying saucer flying low across the road right in front of them. So Grandma and Grandpa joined into the conversation, and they'd all seen the same thing at the same time. And so that's typical of a story from my youth that I retained, for sure. As far as anyone who doesn't believe that there are flying saucers and aliens, well, whatever, believe what you want. I don't care.
I should probably tell you that these two gentlemen are the most, anyway, we're going to get into that. Look, Bob, I wanted to ask you personally, as somebody who's been channeling, is Josiah a singular entity or is it a collective of entities? That's the next question, because the message alters slightly. And the message alters slightly. It's the same message, but it always alters slightly, and it's always relevant to the people who attend these channelings. So I suppose the question is, what do you experience Josiah as in terms of the presence?
But Josiah themselves say that they are a multidimensional personality. That's how they describe themselves. And if you think about it, we are a multidimensional personality. If you believe in reincarnation, then we are a multidimensional personality. And I'm not in favor of past lives because I don't think there's such a thing as a past life versus present life or a future life. We live in different areas of our multidimensional personality in our multiple lives at the same time. That's what I think. And those are some of the experiences that I have when I channel, is that I partake in some of those other lifetimes, both what we might call future and past. And many times, some of them are much more inviting than the lifetime that I live in right now. It would be very easy to stay there. And so I think that we are a multidimensional personality as well, and similar to what they are. We are so much more than what we realize in our awakened consciousness state. We, in those other personalities, those other lifetimes that we have, I believe affect the personality that we are now, although I'm really hesitant to say that we don't have control over how they affect that. I'm not a fan of karma or that you must go through certain things, or I just don't buy into some of that stuff. But so that's what Josiah claims they are, simply as we are. They say as we are. They are a multidimensional personality. And the main difference between them and us is that they have never lived in this vibrational level or in this consciousness that we live in. Other than that, we're the same thing.
Understood. All right. So I suppose the final question I have before we open this up to the audience to ask whatever questions, whether you're in the community or whether you are watching this on Facebook, you may ask questions. We're taking questions from everywhere. Is how has the influence of aliens, in your case, Rick, and the visitation of Josiah to your life, how has it affected your lives individually? Rick, you can go first on this one.
Well, I certainly enjoy the Josiah channelings for sure. One time they mentioned in a channeling that if there are such things as aliens, they would be aliens because they're not from here. As far as aliens influencing my life, well, I don't know. But I think the beliefs I hold are probably quite different than a lot of people. One time a psychic told me that that one of my incarnations is as a gray alien. Which gray alien, I do not know. Well, anyway, the psychic said, if you were to spend any amount of time in the company of my gray aliens, because there's endless different types of gray aliens, if I were to spend any amount of time in the presence of my gray aliens, I would quickly dump my human belief systems and adopt those of that group of gray aliens. So, do they influence this life? Sort of. I guess everything influences everything.
That is the vaguest answer that I have heard. All right, as it may. So I'm going to be surgical with my questions. The first question is, has it expanded your consciousness any, or has it made you paranoid? How do you feel as an individual
Well, I don't know if you've read that book, Initiation by Elizabeth Heish, but
No,
there
I
was a time when all the witchy women that I knew all read that book like it was some kind of initiation thing for them, even though they didn't even know each other, but they'd all read that book. In that book, Elizabeth Heish talks about how you can be, when you cut your fingernails or your toenails, you're so super sensitive. And for her as a baby or as a child, it was that way. For me, it was that way. This reality was so harsh. I remember at one point looking at the trees behind our house and thinking, this reality is so harsh. At some point, I'm going to be in a position to throw a wrench into the gears that drive this reality, and I will not hesitate because it does not have to be so harsh.
Mhm.
I think this new age and this new energy is the wrench in the gears. The reality is changing so quickly,
Mhm.
and it'll be a lot more fun to be here in the years to come, if you believe there is such a thing as a passage of time.
I want to make an observation here. The reality might be harsh because you live in Saskatchewan, and it might have been winter. I'm just going to just drop that in there, right? Bob, how was how was the entity which calls itself Josiah affected your life for the better or for the worse?
Well, I would have to say for the better, undoubtedly. I mean, I'm so much more aware of what's going on around me now than I ever was when I was 25 years old. So it's affected me. Rick and I had a conversation here, I believe it was just yesterday, when I've now reached asking the question of not whether or not I can do something, but why do I keep doing things that require me to do something to fix them? Why do I get into that situation in the first place? So that's where I'm at now. Rick is always after me to tell people, and so maybe I will tell people so that you get an idea of what I'm talking about. I've been diagnosed with cancer twice. Both times the doctors took their samples, sent them away, came back as positive that I had cancer. First time was skin cancer. And when I went back 2 months later, the skin cancer was gone. And of course, the doctors, they don't know what to say to you when that happens. The last time they sent tissue away and told me I had prostate cancer. And so 6 weeks later or 2 months later, I went in for a biopsy. And they sent the test tissues away, and it came back. And he didn't know how to explain to me. He said, I don't know how to tell you this, but there's no cancer. And so I can tell you if people want to know what my technique is to take care of those kind of problems. But the question is, why the hell do I create that in the first place so that I can fix it? Would it not just be better to not experience it in the first place and to not have to go through that? So that's where I'm at now. And that's how much my beliefs have changed, that I can control things that most people look upon as being beyond their control, or even worse yet, they think of it as a miracle, and it's not a miracle. It's simply believing. It seems like when the doctors or the scientists can't explain how something occurs, the first reaction is, well, it must be a miracle, or we must have made a mistake, instead of accepting that it is possible for you to cure some of those diseases or those ailments or other difficulties in your life if you believe that it's possible. I have a saying that a true belief does not require validation, but rather embodies an expectation. And so my question is, what do you expect when you're involved in a scenario like that? And now my question once again is, why the hell do I have to go through that to try to
I remember when you got that diagnosis and you told me the diagnosis in that restaurant. I had to tell you, my heart sank, right? It really did. It really did. I have to tell you. And I didn't take it well. You were laughing about it. I remember when you were laughing about it, and I did not take it well. I just wanted to validate, talking about validation, what she's saying. Rick did share, Bob did share his diagnosis with me at the time, and my heart sank quite a bit. And yeah, and then your cancer is gone. And this is something that is unbelievable to me. And you see, you have to see these things to actually, a lot of people are not going to be able to experience this stuff because they usually think of it as a one-way road and they have very little control, right? And I suppose you're going to say something along the lines of, what do you believe?
What do you believe?
What do
The
you
fact that you
right.
can't control it is, what do you believe?
If you can't control it, then that's what you believe. But having 2 cancer diagnoses and erasing them is impressive for anybody. All right. And so with that, I want to open up the forum to anybody who wants to ask questions to Rick, Bob, or myself. And I see we have a very interesting set of people viewing in the community and viewing in the room. So guys, have at it, unmute and let it rip, because I got a lot of stuff to say. And by the way, for that matter, we're opening this up all over the fence. So like, I'm going to ask questions to you guys as well if you don't ask questions. So don't run. There is no hands up here. Anybody unmute? And she's thinking about it.
I unmuted. Hi, everyone. Okay, so I have a question, and I think this is more for Rick, but it could be for anyone. And this might be a strange question, but if the aliens had something to tell humanity or give us some advice, what would they say?
Leave Earth.
Believe. Believe to leave Earth.
Get out while you still can.
Probably like a recent Sadhguru video where he was asked about the wars, and Sadhguru made the comment, as long as humanity keeps on with its violent thoughts, the wars will continue. And I would think that would be the same advice that aliens would say. Love yourself and love everyone. Stop fighting.
Right.
That just what comes to my mind. Good question.
Thank you.
We already know what Josiah has to say, tell humanity, but you know what? I'm going to ask the question anyway. Bob, what would you think the collective would have to say to humanity?
Well, you see, I believe we're all connected. I don't think that there is any separation between us, despite the fact that we go to great lengths to have that separation. But I don't think there's any separation. I've come to believe through Josiah that we are all connected. We are all one. And as such, when these events that are happening around the world are occurring, and we choose to ignore when we know that it's occurring, but we don't want to be involved in that, so we shut it off, I think that you are by default assisting that or allowing that to continue to occur. And so Josiah has said that we are now into an era whereby, and you could probably have Rick talk about this because he listens a lot more to it than I do, but they're talking about the present people that are being born now are people who will understand that they have the ability to create their reality, even though they may not know how they do it. And they're called the indigo children. You've probably all heard of the phrase, the indigo children. But Josiah says that the next generation will not only understand they have the ability, but they will understand that they create it from a position of absolute and unconditional love. And as such, Josiah claims that the next generation will be what Josiah calls the peacemakers, that they will understand that it's only through understanding what's going on in the rest of the world and realizing that you have a part in applying compassion to that it can happen. And so often we look at those conflicts, for example, the conflict that's going on in Europe right now between Russia and Ukraine, and we think of Russia as being the aggressors, of the bad people. Well, don't think for a minute that those Russian soldiers don't lay down every night the same as the Ukrainian soldiers and wish to hell that they weren't there, that don't suffer the same losses and feelings that the Ukrainian side does. To think that one side is somehow not experiencing all the trauma and all of the violence and all of the bad stuff that comes along with war, to think simply because it was their country that started the war means that they're not experiencing all of that negativity and all of those sleepless nights and all of the horrors that they have been involved in. I mean, we must have pity for all people that are involved in those, not just one side, and not just say one side's to blame and the other one isn't. At some level, we all agree to participate and to allow, and by not issuing compassion to all the people involved in those situations, then by default, I believe that we allow it to continue.
Mm-hmm.
And
I think
civilized people don't kill other people, and they don't have to be told that either. I don't know if you guys are familiar with
what is
Jim
that?
Sparks. This is a book by Jim Sparks called The Keepers. He spent the first 6 years of his life being the first six years of being consciously abducted by gray aliens, hating them. And once he came around to doing what they asked for, now he loves them and loves the next time that they're going to come and pick him up. And he has said to his gray aliens, you guys have all this fantastic technology. With this technology, we could clean up the earth, not in weeks or months, but in hours. Why don't you share it with humanity? And his grays told Jim Sparks, we have shared this technology with every country on the planet. They all do the same thing, turn it into weapons and hide it away. So somehow the aliens have thought that the leaders of a country were the right people to talk to, and obviously it's not. So now they say
that's never a good idea.
Now they say they're going to the individuals and giving these ideas, and humanity is going to have this technology one way or another. So these indigo kids would probably be of that ilk, where they're taking instructions from in their dream time from so-called aliens or Nikola Tesla or whatever. It's not like aliens are that advanced. Tesla had it just as advanced stuff as the aliens do. If you listen to Andy Basiago telling about teleportation in the 60s when he was a little kid with his dad in the Parsons Company at Los Alamos Labs again. And Andy Basiago, who ran for president against Trump, maybe, I think, the first time. And he said, when he gets to be president, he's going to open up all this technology because there's no reason for burning gas and diesel. We could all be teleporting. We don't need to be using cars and so on. So, and that was Nikola Tesla technology, not alien technology. So we got smart people here too.
Yeah, so I suppose my question is, in terms of the technological question which you posed, we have had a number of situations where technology has been misused over like a course of history since the 60s and so on. And one of the greatest misuse of technology is the discovery of the atom. Okay. We discovered the power of the atom and we turned it into a bomb. Okay. So I suppose my question is, and I'm going to shorten this question for you guys. If it is that we indeed create our own reality, why is it necessary? And I suppose as the question was posed by Bob earlier, to create those situations of unpleasantness, extreme unpleasantness that we inflict on each other. For what reason? To understand what? For what purpose? Okay, because we could say that there's good people and there's evil people and so on, and it's all self-created and people are creating each other's reality and we're creating our own reality and so on. But at the end of the day, there's nothing that quite explains what is going on in the world. Right now, we have tribalism on a scale that we have never seen before. We got the left, the right, the pinks, the purples. We got all sorts of different factions warring over each other. And I suppose this drama, this drama that's going on in the world, what are the, first of all, causes, and what is the reason for all of this? Is it just unawareness, or is it that we deliberately create these situations so that we can experience different kinds of, I don't know, events, so that our consciousness can be expanded? Because there are two views where this is concerned. I guess I want your opinion on this, both of you.
Well, it's creating by default for the most part. And those violent thoughts that Sadhguru talked about. As long as people have those violent thoughts, the wars will continue and the horrors will continue. So if you want a better, all we can do is each as an individual, at least work on ourselves and taming our own thoughts.
Yeah. That will not stop the tribalism. So, Bob, what is your opinion with regard to why this tribalism and all of this stuff that is going on in the world?
People that are responsible for that are searching for their own self-gratification, and therefore the emotions and feelings that come from that kind of self-gratification. And so it's like almost any other event that we participate in. While you may not like the feelings and the emotions, if you break anything down that you're doing, absolutely anything, you will come to find that it's because there's a certain feeling or an emotion that you are trying to experience. You're trying to get to that point so that you can experience that feeling or that emotion. And that's difficult to accept if what you're creating is not something that you really desire. That becomes much, much harder for you to accept that. But nonetheless, if you don't accept that, then you begin to believe that you are not in control. And when you begin to believe that you're not in control, then you begin to create by default, and you actually will validate that you're not in control, versus the opposite, where you accept even the bad stuff and understand that you're in control, and then you do have the option to change it. As difficult as that may seem, but you have the option to control that reality, and to do it in this day and age, probably consciously, in a manner that was very difficult for us to do before. So that's my opinion. People do it whether they understand it or not, so that they can experience that particular reality and the emotions and feelings that are the result of it. And if you don't accept that, once again, then the alternative is that you're not in control. And if you're not in control, then you can't change it. Then you believe that it's beyond your control.
Okay. Honestly, I'm going to let somebody else ask a question here, because I have follow-up questions to that. You can ask questions if you guys want, or just post it in the chat and I will pick it up.
Another way of looking at the reality is, if you look at this reality as a video game, and from our higher self perspective, there is no good or bad or anything else. It's all just a play, a game, a movie, a video game. And so whether you win the lottery and win $1 million or be burnt alive at the stake, there is no difference to the higher self. It's just all fun. And so a soul might look at this reality and say, being burned alive at the stake, that would give me some really intense experiences. I think I want to choose that one. And others that have been here say, oh, no, you don't want that one. Oh, yes, that's what I want. And then the being comes here and they're being burnt alive at the stake, and they say, this wasn't really a very good choice, I think. But until you experience it, you probably don't know. And so a lot of these negative experiences from the other side, the soul is saying, oh, wow, this looks so much fun. I'm going to be, beaten by my parents or whatever god awful thing comes to mind, because that would be so intense. Nobody goes to see the same. There's all kinds of movies. Some people like horror movies. Some people like action movies. Some people like drama. Some people like romance. Some people like comedy. Everybody's different. And so the kind of things that we're going to choose will be different too. And from that perspective of the higher self, where there is no right or wrong to it, it's just, what do you want to do? What do you think looks exciting to you?
Yeah, and that's true even in our reality, because some people like roller coasters. And then they get on the roller coaster and they realize, oh, it's a really bad idea, right? Right? Some people pass out on those roller coasters, right? And you're right, some people go to haunted houses and so on, specifically for the experience of being scared out of their wits, and then they discover that probably this wasn't such a good idea, my nerves can't handle it. So I suppose if you are a soul that has not had the embodied experience of horror, it just looks like another film to you. It just looks like something else that could happen. Yeah, I suppose you could look at it like that. Absolutely. Guys, you have any other questions? Really, just jump in. Go, Sam.
I have one. Do you guys feel that sometimes religion gets in the way of some of those outer thoughts of where that's the reason why they don't realize the power that they have is because of the religion has made it seem like they have no power, and it's been drilled into people that they have no power because God is outside and there's an outside creator?
Good question, Sam. Damn good question. Who wants to go first? I'm going first here. All right, because religion has been a very interesting force in society. I remember when it used to be that you had God, but if you were Catholic, the priest and the Pope were the intercessory between God and yourself. So you couldn't access God because God ain't got time for you. You gotta tell the priest, and the priest is going to tell God that you're sorry for all the bad things that you've done, right? That is inherently disempowering because it discourages people from talking directly to their prime creator, what they consider to be the universal law or whatever else. So that would be the first thing that I have to say where this is concerned. The second thing that I would have to say where this is concerned is that embedded in a lot of religion is the concept of complete and total submission. Okay? And it's not just Christianity that is guilty of this. This idea of total and complete submission, which is totally in opposition to what these gentlemen are saying. Now, notice that there's a difference between humility, being humble, and then being completely and totally submissive. Okay? And they actually put in rituals in the religion to make sure that people are submissive. So you're on your knees, you're doing some sort of prostration, and they sell it as you are being humble and humbling yourself to the prime creator. What these gentlemen are saying, for the most part, is that you are part of the creator. You are the creator. And so there is an opposition that is inbuilt there. So now the next question, I suppose, that needs to be answered is why? Why break people away from the notion that they can create their own reality based on their belief system? I can't help you with that. I suppose disempowered people are easier to control. I don't know. And if you're into that control thing, but then you're creating your own miserable reality. Because let me tell you, trying to control anybody has got to be a full-time job. The spirit is not configured for external control. Nobody's spirit is configured for external control. There are a lot of people who sell away their own power, but I'm going to tell you that the natural function of a human being is to float and be free, right? That is the word. That is what the word mantra means: to float and to be free. Man, mind, tra, to float and be free. And so I couldn't help you, but to answer your question on religion, I think that a lot of people are disempowered by their belief system, which is what Bob is going to probably take up. And they can be freed by the same belief system if they're listening to this broadcast and we tell them, oh, by the way, did you know that you didn't have to experience any of that stuff? You could just be free. Bob, I pass that ball to you.
Well, with regards to religion, what makes religion successful is fear. People they fear what happens if they don't follow the religion. If you take the fear away, then religion loses its power. You know, it always amazes me, and I've told this to many people, that I've gone to funerals for people who I know, if you believe in the Bible, there's no way they're ending up in heaven, right? They're going to hell. And yet, when you listen to the priest, he always says, this man is now, or this woman is now in the arms of Jesus. Never fails. They never ever say, you know, I don't know if this guy made it. He had some pretty shady stuff going on in his life. He might be having trouble right now. You never hear that. And so it's the fear that they give you that makes religion so powerful. People are afraid of what they're taught. And I mean, I was taught the same thing. I went to Sunday school and to church until I was a teenager, and I went every Sunday. It was part of my upbringing. And so I understand that it's the fear of what's going to happen to you if you don't follow the rules of the religion. And so fear is the ultimate thing that makes religion successful. Now, Josiah says, and I haven't listened to Josiah for years, but I know what they say on some of the basic stuff. And one of the things they tell you is, you are the God you search for. You are God. They also tell you, you create your own reality. And they also tell you that you choose to exist with the limitations of that understanding, but you cannot fail at some point in your consciousness to come to the understanding that you are God, that there is no other creator other than what you are. So that's my thoughts on religion. I want to reemphasize that I don't care what people believe. If you are religious and that religion helps you live what you feel is a better life, then by all means, go for it. I'm not going to tell you not to be religious or to change your beliefs. That's your choice. Absolutely. It's just my thoughts on it once again are that religion is based on fear, and it has done more harm to the people in this earth than almost anything else combined. So just my thoughts.
Rick, you wanna speak on this?
Well, sure. And all of that being said, it's true. Josiah has said from the start, they have no interest in coming into this reality. And when we think of realities, this reality, our Lemurian, Atlantis, Hathor, old energy, new energy, 5 epochs, our galaxy, our endless galaxies in the physical reality, our various states of awareness, our here now waking state, our daydream state, our meditative state, our deep dream state, our between life incarnational state. All of these are part of this reality. And most beings in all existence do not want to come into this reality whatsoever. During Lemurian times, yeah, some of them would taste it. But as far as when we got into the harsher laws of physics, as it were, in each of the 5 epochs, each epoch has its own law of physics. And we're changing now that we're in the golden age or new age. Our physics is changing again. It's not the same earth, it's not the same physics. So a lot of those beings who wouldn't dream of coming here will probably come now as indigos or peacemakers in what we would call the future. This reality is, as Josiah says, one of the few, the beings who understand that they are the I thought. God is all it is, the oneness, and they are also the I am thought, the being, the spirit, the soul that is aware that it is God, and that is also aware that it is a unique perspective of God. In this reality, we separate one step further to a little me who doesn't know that he's God. As we go further into this new age and new energy, we will be able to operate from here, which is what my understanding of the peacemakers, they will do. In the past, we didn't allow Jesus and Buddha to run the country and to run big businesses, and they wouldn't do it in the first place. In the future, those types, Christ or Buddha or what have you, they will run corporations and countries and so on. This reality, the reason beings come here, I believe Josiah says all the time, is because they can hide. There is no other reality in all existence where you can hide from this. All other realities, the beings operate from here. They understand they're God, Goddess, all it is, the oneness, and they understand they are a unique perspective. This is the only reality in which we can separate one step further and create an ego or bag of beliefs. And that bag of beliefs has no idea that it is this. It thinks it's separate from the reality, separate from you, separate from me. And of all the realities in all of existence, this is the only one where we can experience that. And this is what intensifies the emotional impact when we're born and we get burned alive with a stake or beaten up by our parents or whatever god-awful thing we imagine would be so much fun from the other side to experience. And then we get here, start experiencing it and say, well, maybe that wasn't such a good choice, was it?
Yeah, agreed. All right, so guys, I suppose we're coming to the end of this broadcast, so let us wrap this up. The first thing is first, I want to say, first of all, thank you for being here. Are there any other questions at all? Because I could ask questions. We had a very interesting discussion right now. So I suppose the first question, the final question, I should say, I want to ask you guys is, what advice do you have for the audience who is watching this, whether on YouTube, Facebook, in terms of, I know what the advice is going to be. So I'm going to go first on this one. I am so going to go first on this one. In terms of advice for those of you watching, we are living in a very crazy world right now. I believe for the most part, a lot of people are hurting. A lot of people are in desperation. A lot of people are broken from what we've experienced in the last few years and so on. I meet people who are, very few people tell me that everything's great, everything's going okay. Actually, I haven't met one person in the last, 6 months, but then that might be me creating that reality. But anyway, who says everything is great, everything is going away, I'm just totally chipper. Yeah, no, we're not even going there. The two of you, I'm going to exempt from this discussion because you'll laugh at everything. You had a cancer diagnosis, you laughed at it, all right? You, Rick, he had a cancer diagnosis, you laughed at him, right? And now it's gone. So now we're exempting you from this process here. I haven't met any sane person who said that they're having a grand old time. And I suppose I want to offer these people a little bit of words of comfort here. Knowing your own power and knowing your ability to create your reality, a lot of people are making decisions out of desperation and out of reaction. And sometimes the best advice that I could give you is to stop what you're doing, freeze time and space. You have the ability to do so. Let it stop. I had to stop recently. I had to freeze time and space. I had to stop and evaluate, because things were going off the rails. A lot of the times things go off the rails, and sometimes you just need a pause button, and you need to reevaluate your life and understand that you are the center of everything and that is happening to you, and to change it with your mind first, with your spirit first, and with everything else after, as opposed to running around like a chicken with your head cut off, trying to patch up crisis after crisis. Sometimes you just need to make everything stop. That would be my advice. I'm passing the ball to Rick.
My advice, learn to meditate. If you think you can't meditate, buy a CD that teaches you how to meditate and use that until you can figure it out for yourself. When you figure it out for yourself, you will eventually start counting your breaths. 1 in, 2 out, 3 in, 4 out, only to 4. And eventually, like Bob does, and I do too, switch over to your heartbeats as soon as you can, because you'll quickly, anyway, but learn how to meditate and do it every day. I try to meditate a couple of times a day, actually. I have an electric chair, a full body minute.
When you said you have an electric chair,
Yeah,
when you
yeah.
said you have an electric chair, let's when you said you have an electric chair, you made an electric massager chair, right?
Yeah, a full body massage chair. Yeah. Mhm.
Okay,
call
not
it
a
the
full body
electric
electric chair. Go ahead.
So I will do probably about a half an hour or so meditation in that. And I also try to do a meditation other than that one myself. And sometimes I listen to HemiSync or other tones to help me. I love jumping in on Zooms where they're doing a meditation, because both Bob and I have talked about this. It's so easy to jump off the group energy, even if it's a Zoom. It doesn't matter. There is no such thing as space. And the one that we go to all the time, Parvian, her group has really good energy, and I really can bounce off of it well. And I think Bob can too. Well, I'll let him talk about that himself. So my advice, meditate and keep at it. It will solve your problem. You can use it proactively too, and Bob will tell you about that. But I've used it proactively in my life as well. And Bob Monroe was all about have a purpose. Don't just, go to a meditative state for nothing. Well, there is no nothing about it. It's always, for me, very healing. And what I try to do is I try to just stay in the stillness. And yes, you'll see all those dreams and all that psychic shit come along. And sometimes you can just touch it with your finger and get a flavor of it. But it's like holding back an orgasm, not to get sucked into the thing. Not that there's anything wrong with that. You can do that too. But for me, it's more healing just to sink into the stillness as deep as I can go, holding my awareness and being still and not touching any of that psychic stuff. Although the psychic stuff's fun too. But I'm just saying, for myself, for my own healing, and that would be my advice for others too. Sink into that deep, deep state as much as you can.
Bob,
That's it.
I suppose we need to have you.
I mean, I agree completely with Rick. I don't think you can get any better advice than to meditate. One of the things that I do is that, while I agree with Rick that getting into that stillness is a way to really get an understanding of the illusionary reality that we exist in when we're in our conscious state, there is no better way than to get as deep as you can into meditation until you get a glimpse of that, of the real reality of the unconditional love, that overwhelming feeling that you can't explain. That's great. But I also use meditation to help me in things that I want to achieve in my day-to-day activities. I quite often meditate with a purpose in mind. For example, I've just told everybody that my latest thing with cancer has gone away. And I meditated on it from the time that the first test results came back and they told me that I had cancer. I meditated on it every day until I went back for the second biopsy. And I went through a process where I if you're interested, are you interested in my process? Do you want me to tell you what okay, what I envision is that wholeness, that oneness that I am, I envision it as a energy I put on the outside of my being. And then I deeply inhale and I feel that, draw that into my lungs. I may imagine that energy being drawn into my lungs. And from my lungs, much like oxygen, I envision it going into my bloodstream, and from my bloodstream going through my body and changing any parts of my body that I would like to change. And I'm quite specific in that I don't look at the cancer as being a negative thing. It's just something in my body that I want to change, but it's something that I put there. So I don't look at it as being evil or something that is a terrible thing. It's just something that happened because of a particular belief that I was holding, and I just want to change that. I don't want to treat it as something that happened to me that I was not in control of, and therefore it's evil and I want to get rid of it, but rather to change it. And so I envision that energy that I have put into my bloodstream going to those particular cells and changing them. And I visualize it in my mind. I actually see it happening. So that's what I do. So I utilize meditation for more than just getting to the still spot that Rick is talking about, but I use it for almost everything in my life that I want to, that I need some assistance with from my deeper consciousness into my awake consciousness. So my best advice that I could give anybody, meditate every
Agreed.
day, once a day. I think it's the greatest thing you can do for your health and for your well-being.
Excellent. Well, if there are no more questions, I suppose we should call this expert call to a close. It's been fun, gentlemen, as usual. I'm sure somebody is going to have some comments and some questions after the fact, and we will answer them. Once again, a reminder that we're going to be doing a live channeling on December the 8th at 6:15 to 6:30 p.m. That's Central Time or Mountain Time. I believe that would be 6 o'clock Eastern Time Zone. And we will be streaming that live to YouTube and various other destinations. So for those of you who are attending in person, we have dropped the landing page. If you guys need any further information where that is concerned, you can DM me or you can DM Nicole. Nicole is on screen right now, and we will be happy to assist you. Bob, Rick, it's been a pleasure as usual, gentlemen. We'll see you next time. Okay, bye everyone.
Thank you.